On the Road with Kelly and Bob, the USA 250 Tour, brought to you by Mueller. Coming up on this episode...
I'm preserving history for the future because more and more of this stuff is getting thrown away and destroyed, and people have no place to see it.
We, the people of the United States of America.
Hello, and thanks for joining us for this episode of On the Road with Kelly and Bob, the USA 250 Tour. I'm Bob Phillips.
And I'm Kelly Phillips. Almost from the time that people inhabited our planet, they have kept a record of what's going on. First with cave drawings, then the things like the alphabet, the printing press, and all the way up to the internet today.
But for the past 175 years or so, we have had a way to make and preserve actual images of our world. And that came with the invention of, and improvements to, photography, a way to capture and keep pictures of life as we know it.
And nowhere is that invention celebrated like it is in a small building we found in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
A photographer friend of ours likes to say, moments and memories are all we have. And I have to agree with that. In the grand scheme of things, moments and memories rank right up there with the important things like family and friends.
But keeping those memories close was always a challenge because life was fleeting. One second it was here, the next second it was gone. But then a monumental invention changed all of that. We stopped by a place on East Ohio Street in Pittsburgh to find out more from our friend Bruce Klein.
Photo Antiquities Museum is a 19th century photographic museum, one of the only ones in the country. And if there was another one, it wouldn't be the same because a lot of our images are one of a kind.
If there is one thing that Bruce Klein knows like the back of his hand, it's the world of photography, all the way from the very first photo ever taken to the digital age we live in today. He is the creator of what is one of the best collections of photos and photographic equipment in the country.
And he says it was photography that changed the way we remember this thing called life.
The first photograph ever taken was taken by Niepce in 1825, and that black top frame is what the first photograph looked like. It was a 10-hour exposure. It was done on a piece of pewter, and the original sits in the University of Texas in Austin in their vaults. It's 4 by 5, small.
A 10-hour exposure.
Mm-hmm. In the 1950s, they enhanced it. That's what that second black frame is. That's what it would have looked like if it didn't fade away. So Niepce gets credit for the first photograph, but not the first permanent photograph, because it faded. So he worked with another Frenchman, Louis-Jacques Mandate Daguerre. In 1839, Daguerre used a piece of copper. He put silver on it. He polished it till it was a mirror. It took him sometimes 2 hours to polish a plate. His exposure time went from 10 hours to under 30 minutes. That was pretty good. But his problem was how you develop it. You put it into a wooden box. The bottom of the box is mercury. Heat the mercury till it vaporizes. Those vapors rise up through the box. They hit the iodine and the image only appears. But these guys are smelling mercury fumes 4 hours, 6 hours a day. Some died, some got dementia, and others went blind.
Bruce Klein says from the time when it was first invented, the world of photography has advanced like almost every other invention, like aviation, television, computers, and all the rest. Simply put, after an initial breakthrough, it just kept getting better and more affordable.
And that, he says, is why it has changed our world.
So when they realized that people were dying from mercury poisoning in England in 1854, they invented the second process called an ambrotype, an image on glass. And in order to make it positive, he had something black to it, and lo and behold, you have a
Well, look at
positive
that.
image
So we went from the Daguerre
to the
Ambro.
Ambro-type. Which, of course, you know, the problem with this is every time you dropped it, you cracked it. So the only process that we invented in the United States in 1856 was at Kenyon College over in Ohio, and it was called a tintype. The beauty is no glass breakage, no mercury poisoning. Now, with the glass negative, the substrate becomes paper, and they called them carte visites, CDV for short. And now you can make as many as you want, and you only have to sit one time. And it becomes affordable. Photography changed a lot from the 1830s through the 1860s, and it became worldwide. Now we're going to take you into our camera room. We have a few thousand cameras on display. This is an exhibit of the Eastman Company, George Eastman. George Eastman, one of the first cameras he sold for home use. You shot at 100 exposures. You shot the camera, you sent it back to Rochester, New York. He sent you 100 photographs mounted on these boards. He'd reload the camera with film, and he'd send the whole camera back to you.
Take a trip to Bruce Klein's Photo Antiquities Museum in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and you will take a trip back in time. His collection and his stories go on and on. And trust me, we couldn't get enough of them.
He is a walking, talking history lesson of one of the most enjoyable parts of life, preserving our moments and our memories.
When did you first become fascinated with all of this?
It was probably in the 1980s. Yeah, in the 1980s, I enjoyed looking at things like tintypes. There was actually no place that you can go and see them. I mean, the best photographic collection in the world, in the United States, is owned by the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C., but the majority of that is in caves. So I thought it'd be an interesting thing to actually show all the processes so people can see the evolution of photography and actually get to see how photography changed over the years and why. And so I started to put a little collection together, and then it grew and grew and grew.
How many photographs do you think you have?
I have no idea, but a lot.
What is it about photographs that keep people intrigued day in, day out, year after year?
Well, think about it. You know, a photograph is recording a moment in time that creates a memory that can last a millennium.
Wow. So when you look at our country, and photography comes along when we're barely, not even 100 years old as a country.
Right.
So are we the most documented country in the world on photographs, or?
Well, we are the most documented world on photographs because of the phone. There's more photographs taken on the phone in one day than we would have taken in an entire year. Everybody has a camera today with them. So everybody's photographing everything every day. You know, and I look at a photograph, first of all, I can look at a photograph 100 times, and then the 101th time, I see something different. And every time you look at something, you notice something. Either something's out of place, or a certain smell, or a certain look, and then you can only imagine what took place in that photograph. I mean, you know, again, you're going to have to guess what was going on.
I get a feeling you can get lost in all of these pictures.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you could. Absolutely, you can.
I mean you, though.
Oh, I can get lost in them, yeah.
You know, Kelly, I have a very tiny camera collection, as you know, including the camera I learned to shoot news film on decades ago. A camera I used when I shot for NFL films and for other projects, and a few others. It's a personal collection that means something only to me. But I got the feeling that every camera in Bruce Klein's collection, whether it be for photography or cinematography, really means something to him.
Yeah, we didn't get to spend nearly enough time there. But there is a lot more of our conversation with Bruce that we want to share with you.
Including more on the development no pun intended, I promise, of the world of photography, where Bruce got his huge collection and what he thinks of photography in these modern times. But let's start with a quick story about Kodak pioneer George Eastman and another name I think you might recognize.
In the 1940s, he runs into a man that's helping airplane pilots. In the 1940s, when airplane pilots flew, they had a glare in the horizon. This man built goggles for these pilots to wear. It cut the glare. Well, George Eastman has a use for that in photography. He cuts glare off of lenses, cuts glare off of lighting, and he gives this guy enough money. This guy takes all that money that George Eastman gives him, and he opens his own company in 1948. He calls it the Polaroid Corporation.
Polaroid.
And his name is Dr. Land. There's a photo of Dr. Land down there. And Dr. Land was a scientist, inventor, a futurist, and he wanted to have a lot of patents. So what does he do? He opens his company in Boston. And into his research and development department, he only hires MIT students. So when he dies in 1991, he has the second most patents of any man in the world, other than Edison. And what he invented for the goggles, we call those polarized sunglasses today. Give you an idea on affordability. If you had a daguerreotype taken in 1839 and you put it into 2025 money, or money today, the cost back then would be $1,000 for one. But by the time that you started making a negative and you started making them on paper, from the 1856 to 2025, the cost back then would have been about $10. So now it's affordable to the masses and not just the wealthy people. Very, very popular, and that's why you see a lot of Civil War soldiers have them, because it was right in that time frame.
And I noticed no one smiled back then.
Yeah, so here's the answer. When you had your daguerreotype, I told you it was 30 minutes. You couldn't hold a smile for 30 minutes.
You're going to be moving your face.
You're going to be moving, yeah. Now, even though your eyes open and close, they're open more than they're closed, so it will look like they're open. In reality, I told you that this time frame was about a half an hour. The ambrotype, a couple minutes. By the time they got to the tintype and the CDV, you're in the seconds. In reality, by the 1860s, you could have smiled. But when you looked at the old photographs of your parents and grandparents, no one ever smiled.
Very stoic.
Very stoic. So you thought that's the only way your photograph is to be taken. People didn't start smiling until the early 1900s.
Do we know what they were smiling about?
Well, you know who I usually see smiling are pictures of babies, because they didn't know better. But that's about the only people that really smile. So,
Generational.
1865, when the Civil War was over, there was photographers that worked for Matthew Brady's studios in Washington, D.C. And now they're out of a job. The war's over, so he doesn't need them anymore. So now what do? So already in Washington, D.C., they took out a large camera, a 16 by 20 inch camera, big camera, and they photographed things like the White House, they photographed the Capitol, things like that. Whatever was in D.C. at the time, back then in those days, they would photograph.
And this was one of those big wooden cameras, right?
Yeah, so then they would take this 16 by 20 glass negative and sit it on a piece of paper and make a big print. So you can imagine the clarity and the sharpness that you'd see every blade of grass or every piece of dirt in the ground, because the negative is so big. You probably have over 100,000 negatives in all formats, from glass negatives 8 by 10 all the way down to small little ones, images, thousands, cameras, thousands.
And you've gone from zero.
That's correct, from zero to these
To
numbers.
whatever this number is that you don't know what it is.
Exactly.
Are you still collecting?
Yeah, I still buy things, and if there's a camera that comes in that I don't have at the camera store, we buy it at the camera store and we bring it over here. It's on temporary permanent loan. Well, the camera store doesn't necessarily need all the trade-ins that come in, but the museum certainly could use them. So we bring them over here. And over the time, like for an example, and I'll show you, we have 550 different movie cameras. You've seen 35 millimeter slides on a movie screen. Well, you can blow these up 7 foot by 7 foot, and there's a lot of resolution right in here.
Yeah.
Well, before they had that, they had these. These are called lantern slides. Look at the size of these. You could blow these up 10 foot by 20 foot. It's almost like an IMAX. Now, when these are made, they're made in black and white. An artist hand colors these. Now, think about this for a minute. If you're hand coloring these and you go outside the lines, it's no big deal when it's this big. But when you blow it up 10 foot by 20 foot, it's a big mistake. Single hairbrush. They use a one hair brush.
One hair.
So if you hold this up to the light, you can kind of see what it looks like. They're beautiful images. And the photographer was one person, colorist was somebody totally different. So how do the colorists know what color to make it? They had artistic freedom. They could do what they want.
So he can make pink grass if he wanted to.
Here's a brown horse and a red-headed boy. Here's a black horse and a blonde boy. It is the same horse. It is the same boys.
boy.
The only person it matters to is who owned the horse and who owned the boys, right? So about 15 years ago, I got a call from somebody that says, hey, I hear you collect old photographs. I said, yeah. He says, well, I have photographs on glass. Now, to me, photographs on glass could be a negative, or, which is this, a negative, or it could be a positive. So I said, are they black and white or color? He says, there's some of both. So I knew they were lantern slides. And I asked him how many he had. And he said, I have too many. And I said, well, how much is too many? And he says, well, I want to tell you. I'm behind the American Museum of Natural History. Just like it says here, American Museum of Natural History. And I'm a dumpster diver. And they're throwing them away by the thousands. And he fished me out about 5,000 of them. And he left a lot more than he grabbed. So
And they went to another dumpster.
they went to a landfill. Yeah.
Oh, what
So,
a shame.
What a shame, yeah. Because two things. Number one, they record a piece of history. And second, if they're hand-colored, they're a piece of artwork. So it's two things. So you have to step back in the time. Why were they bought? So the time frame is 1880s. How would you go see the Great Wall of China? How would you go see the Sphinx? How would you see the world in 1880? Well, the only way to see the world is by boat.
Yeah.
Well, how many people were going to take that long boat? No one's going to go by boat. So you see the world through a pencil sketch. That's how you see the world. So what they did is they sent teams of photographers by boat to every country in the world. They photographed the country, and they came back, and they had a slideshow, 10 foot by 20 foot on a big screen. And for the first time in your life, you saw the world from life, not through a pencil sketch. So think about that. It would have been amazing to see what an Eskimo lady looks like, or just to see what the Sphinx looks like, but from life, not a pencil sketch. So people it was an educational process. So people actually got to see the world through the lantern slide. Time goes on, eventually you're going to see National Geographic coming to your house. We're going to have air travel. People will go on the internet. What happens to these things? Well, they sit in basements of museums, libraries, schools. They take up space. They take up room. More stuff comes in. More stuff comes in. We need to make space. What can we get rid of? Get rid of those things on glass that no one looks at. And now they go into landfills. And that's why they threw them away.
And that's why you have them.
And that's why I
right
have
here.
them. Correct. And I have them preserved. The way I did it is when I built my cases, this is 5,000 degrees Kelvin. 5,000 degrees Kelvin light is what you see outside. That's white light. So you're looking at this as if you were looking at them outside.
Yeah.
And then on this side, I have two pieces of glass, and sandwiched between that is a piece of UV plexiglass, UV film. And when the light passes that light spectrum, I filter out the UV part of that light so that nothing happens. Same for all my cases. So this way I preserve things from front to back. Wow. So UV plex in the back, glass in the front.
My goodness.
Here, I'll give you an idea. Here's the image of the Louvre. They hand paint, here, look at through here. They hand painting every painting on a wall with a one hair brush.
Oh my gosh.
So think how long it might have taken somebody to do that. And then if another artist did it, it's going to be a totally different color, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if the same artist did it a week later, it's different because you can't mix the colors on the palette the same every time either. So there's no two alike.
That's just
That
phenomenal.
is art, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely art. Absolutely. And there's no two alike. Lumiere, you know the name Lumiere, yeah.
Sure.
He invented the motion picture industry. Well, before he did that, he invented something called autochromes. And autochrome is basically the first color film. And before that, a photographer would actually have to make his actual paper and make his glass negatives. He would have to make it all. But this is the first color film that was commercially available for people to buy. The first color film, basically. So these are called autochromes. Very early color. Invented in 1906.
So Paul Simon made us all aware of
Kodachrome.
Kodachrome.
Oh, yes.
What happened to Kodachrome? Beautiful Kodachrome.
Yeah, so Kodachrome was the longest running film in the history of photography. In the 30s it came out, and it had a life of, I don't know, 60, 70 years it ran. And so Kodachrome always lasted, and the colors were always richer and more vibrant. And you can see our photographer here taking a picture with a flash pan in his hand. Because again, when it did get dark, he still had to illuminate. And so he filled that little trough with a composition of aluminum and magnesium. And when it went off, it became like a little explosion. You can see there's a little leather cuff on his arm. Because what happens is that when the explosion went off, it would burn tiny little pinholes in his wool clothing. So you put this leather cuff on his arm and cooled the sparks off. And you also see he's wearing a top hat. You know, in these old westerns, you see these photographers in these western movies. They're in a dirty old west, dusty old west, and they're wearing a top hat and they're wearing a tux.
So you're saying that there's a significance for wearing the top hat?
There is, absolutely, because when you're holding this flash pan up and it goes off, it burned all the hair off their heads. So they would wear these top hats to protect their hair. Well, you can't wear top hats and blue jeans. So when next time you see an old western, you see them dressed up, you'll know why.
Now I know.
This guy's wearing a waistcoat and a top hat.
You know, you learn through time, you have to step back in the time to see how these people felt. This is kind of an interesting favorite camera. This is called a Super 620. And when Kodak made it, it was the first camera that had an automatic shutter from the meter. And when people saw it, they said, a meter built in with an automatic shutter, we don't want that. We want handheld meters. We want to do it ourselves. And it never caught on. And so they didn't make very many. But, you know, we carry, this one is an interesting camera. Just to tell you, this one here, it's called Big Bertha. It has a 700 millimeter Carl Zeiss lens. And this was mounted in the bleachers of the Forbes Field baseball stadium. And it shot the 1960 World Series. So it might have taken Bill Mazeroski's home run.
That one shot the 1960
World
Series.
Right. We have large format cameras. This is my largest camera here. This is a Deardorff. Deardorff was the Cadillac of large format cameras. As I showed you large cameras, here's a small one. This is what James Bond used in his movies when he copied all his documents.
Yes.
A little Minox camera. Some cameras look like ladies' purses. Some look like pocket watches. Some look like cigarette packs.
Is there a camera that you do not have in your collection that you want?
There is.
Oh.
So there's one camera which is called a Daguerreotype camera. Mm-hmm. There's only a few hundred of them ever left in existence today.
Any chance you'll ever get one?
I don't think so. I have right now 550 movie cameras on the wall. And everything from hand crank to regular 8 to super 8 to 16. And you know, in the 1970s, if you shot a roll of movie film, that's 50 feet. It was about 3.5 minutes. And the cost to buy that and get it developed was about $10. And you got 3.5 minutes. But in 1970, they invented this. Beta and VHS.
Yes.
Well, for $10, you can get two
Two-
2-hour tapes. So 3.5 minutes or 4 hours. What do you think people went
4
for?
hours.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the movie industry started to die. I've showed you photographs that were 100 years old, 170 years old. And you held it in your hand and you looked at it. Now, do you think these digital images that everybody's taking today are going to be around in 170 years? So we're actually losing history. We're recording more history on a daily basis, but we're eventually losing a lot of it in the future because of these electronic images no one prints. Now, when we had film, you still have hard copy. Today, there's no more hard copy.
Think about some of the iconic images, raising the flag on Iwo Jima.
Yeah.
Things like that. What do those really? What do they really say to us? What are they speaking to us?
Well, it's a moment in time that preserves history, and when you look at it, when you see that flag being mounted on that Mount Suribachi, it gives you a sense of national pride. There's a lot of things that give you pride, national pride, or pride in your family, or pride in a country, or pride in a religion, whatever it is, it's pride. And when you see these photographs, I think it gives people a sense of pride or responsibility. So there's a lot of things that a photograph can tell you and make you feel. But documentation photographs by photojournalists, I think, shows you the world, gives people pride, and opens people's eyes to things that they would never normally see.
We truly have documented our world, our country, our culture.
Oh, absolutely.
The people of the world. What does all this mean to you, this collection you've built, all this stuff?
Well, I'm preserving history for the future because more and more of this stuff is getting thrown away and destroyed, and people have no place to see it. So, it's important. I have photo classes coming in. They read about the history of photography. They read about a daguerreotype. They read about a tintype or ambrotype, but they never saw one in person. And here, when they come here, they could actually hold it and see it in their hand, and it comes to life. It's not a flat piece of paper anymore.
What happens to this collection when you're no longer here?
Well, it's to be determined. To be determined. Yes.
This is too important.
Oh, absolutely. It's very important. So, if I can find a good home for it, then we can talk about it, But you may have to go to a couple different places. Some people are interested more in photographs. Other people are interested more in camera equipment. And may have to end up going to a couple different places. But
you have thought about it.
Oh, I've thought about it. But what I don't want to happen is to go someplace and it goes into storage. That's my fear. A lot of places would be more than happy to take this, and then what they're going to do is they're going to put it in their archives, and the world won't see it. Well, what good is that? So that's what I don't want to happen.
And we can only hope that once the time comes, Bruce Klein will find someone to take that entire collection and make it available for all to see, as Bruce has done in Pittsburgh. And we want to thank you for joining us for this week's edition of On the Road with Kelly and Bob, part of the USA 250 tour. Now, you don't want to miss a thing this year, so the best thing to do is follow us on Facebook, Instagram, as well as YouTube. And we want to say a big thank you to our sponsor, Mueller Metal Roofs and Metal Buildings. Without them, we couldn't be traveling to all 50 states. Now, keep in mind, you can listen to us wherever you get your podcast, but the best thing to do, download that free Odyssey app. Listen anytime, anywhere.